You're listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling. And now, here's your host, John Cross.
All right. Hello, one, and hello, all, to this meat-fed, inhumanely raised, partly organic, partly robotic, seldom kosher, but always bearded, all singing and all dancing After Movie Diner live celebration of the 25th anniversary of Beautiful Girls from 1996. With me today to go through the film, discuss our favorite bits, banter back and forth, and no doubt expose the odd Massachusetts accent or two, we have the man, the myth, the legend, the beard, the rider on the wave of synth, the man for whom everyone on Twitch knows as Michael Knight, but whom fans of the diner will always be the urban cowboy and Ellen Barkin forehead leather loving Scott Toomey.
How does one follow that intro? It is impossible to do so.
It's
Happy
fantastic,
to be here.
sir. It's fantastic. Happy to have you. And our last but most definitely not least guest, saving the very best for last. I'm legally obligated by the state of Connecticut to say that. The woman who introduced me to this film, the woman who has my heart, but sadly has to wake up every morning to see these goggly eyes and manic beard coming at her like a Leviathan. She's a marketing whiz, a movie fanatic. She misses live music and hugs. It's the one, the only, my dear and long-suffering spouse. It's Kimberly Cross.
I don't know what to say. I think I was expecting something really weird, and I think we got it. So awesome.
What we got is something really weird. So as we are talking today all about Beautiful Girls, let's just remind people what the movie's all about and play the trailer. Here we go.
They're the best of friends.
Do I got anything in my stash? You clean. Why is he here?
In town for their high school reunion.
I've been back exactly 4 minutes.
But they have one big problem.
I want to give you this.
It's brown.
You buy a colored diamond for a girl you're not even seeing, man. You've been eating retard sandwiches again.
They're all falling in love.
You can slip into something more comfortable.
With beautiful girls.
They're all sisters, Will. Trust me, they're all sisters. It's one big conspiracy.
It's the must-see comedy critics are calling hilarious.
Look at this. Your favorite.
I can go along with that.
Yeah, that's nice, right? Well, these are Silicon City. I could hang my overcoat on them.
Sexy.
Can you think of anything better than making love to an attractive stranger in the middle of a frozen lake with just a oil light to guide your way?
A great comedy.
What part of Chicago are you from?
Do you know Chicago?
Yeah, I know, like, Soldiers Field.
Siskel and Ebert give it 2 thumbs up.
What do you want? You dreaming, obsessed lunatic.
Okay, that's fair.
Matt Dillon, Academy Award winner Timothy Hutton, Rosie O'Donnell, Natalie Portman, Michael Rappaport, Academy Award winner Mira Sorvino, and Academy Award nominee Uma Thurman.
You drunk?
I don't know, but you both look very beautiful.
A beautiful girl can make you dizzy. She can make you feel high. A beautiful girl is all-powerful, and that is as good as love.
He's insane. He's obsessed. You're all obsessed.
Beautiful Girls, the seriously funny hit movie from director Ted Demme.
And you guys, as a gender, have got to get a grip. Otherwise, the future of the human race is in jeopardy.
The voiceover on that trailer from the 90s, that is the voice that if I want to do a sketch where I do kind of the quintessential American goof, that's the voice I do, you know what I mean? And they're all in love with beautiful girls. Like,
I haven't seen that trailer in a long time.
It has been a long time for me as well, until today, obviously, when I put this all together. But I feel like that trailer was on every VHS we rented in the mid-90s. What's your feeling, Scott?
Yeah, probably. I would say Miramax for me in the 90s, mid-90s was like the golden age of my favorite movies. So it's no wonder that this one is on the list.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's funny, right? A lot of us are in that arrested development of going on about the 80s. And I still feel there's a lot more to mine in the 80s. But I've slowly seen in the last couple of years of internet banter with film fans, the 90s is coming in, man. It's about to have its moment, I think. As movies like this turn 25 and 30, I think we're going to start seeing some 90s appreciation in the way that the last decade we've been seeing a lot of 80s appreciation.
Sure.
So first memories of the movie. Kim, how did you first come across the movie Beautiful Girls?
Wow. I was a freshman in college, and some best friends and I went and saw it. So I saw it in the theater. And we just fell in love to the point of like waiting for it to, I remember it coming on like one of the big channels finally and getting to record it on VHS. And then we always had it. Like before we could buy it, I remember recording our own. And while at college, we just rewatched it and rewatched it and rewatched it. And even coming home that summer, I remember coming home and friends at home having watched it, and we watched it. So I just loved it. I remember that year very, very clearly. And just we would just recite lines all the time from it, and we carry that into our adulthood. But yeah, it was freshman year of college for me.
And Scott, how about you? Is it a rites of passage? Does everyone born and raised in Massachusetts have to watch this movie?
Believe it or not, I don't know a lot of people that talk about this movie the way that we do. And I've got a coworker who's a little bit older. He's in his 50s, and he's a big fan of this movie. But yeah, I don't know very many people that know this movie the way that we do. Mm-hmm. For me, which is kind of weird, later years for me in college, I was heavily into the emo music scene. Okay. And a band called Taking Back Sunday, for one of their first singles that they ever released, was called Great Romances of the 20th Century. And the first time they released it as a single, it had Michael Rappaport's speech at the beginning of it. Oh, and wow. I didn't know what it was from. I had to kind of, research and figure that out. When I found out it was from this movie, that then led me to seek out the movie and watch it and own it on every format that it is available on. Mm-hmm. And since then, I would say that was 2003. So since then, I pretty much watch it every year religiously around this time.
So some of the comments we have in the chat, people are talking also about the movie Singles, which I know, Kim, you're also a fan of. And I feel like there's a few of these sort of ensemble movies from this time, certainly off the back of, Kevin Smith's films and Richard Linklater's films as well, which kind of brought kind of guys sitting around having a chat. Even if you look at it like Reservoir Dogs, that whole kind of Miramax indie scene was all about dudes sitting around talking about pop culture. That's kind of the whole 90s kind of
Swingers.
Indie scene came about. That Swingers, right.
One of my all-time favorites.
It's a great call. But and a Facebook user is saying that, and I'm not sure who it is, but says it was a return to 70s sensibilities. I guess I can kind of see that. There was in the sense that it's character and dialogue driven.
Sure.
I still feel they're very 90s movies, but I know exactly what they mean. So let's get into it then. Favorite scenes. Let's talk about some of our favorite scenes. Kim, why don't you go again and just give us just a smattering of some of the things that stick out to you as being really great in the movie?
Well, let's just start with the title, the manifesto of what Rappaport puts into what the meaning of a beautiful girl is. These days, and even in that scene, it can seem creepy the way he talks about it. But it just sets the tone for like what these guys are all thinking. And I think really we'll get to it. But, you see that the movie starts to become kind of a lessons learned of these guys. And really the lessons come from the women. And I think that's just one of my favorite scenes is Paul in his bedroom and really just saying he's going to check that freezer for human heads. That is just, it's the manifesto. And it's really it's like the meaning that he gave kind of brings it to the movie. That's always been a favorite.
Definitely. Scott, how about yourself, sir?
Oh boy. There are many. Well, actually one of my favorites is very, very subtle in the beginning. And And the reason why it's one of my favorites is because every Thanksgiving, my family and I, well, my dad, my uncle, and a few other people, we go to a high school football game. And in the morning, before we get to the game, we stop at Dunkin' Donuts, we get a coffee, and we put a little Sambuca in it. So in the very beginning, when Max Perlich's character complains, "What, no Sambuca in the coffee?" and she says, "Well, it's kind of early." No, not for us. It's not. So I mean, it's a small one, but one of my favorites.
I love that.
I also really love the interaction between Natalie Portman and Timothy Hutton at the ice on the pond when they're skating. A very, very touching and kind of sad, even though the relationship, I know we're going to get into it a little bit later, the relationship is a little weird and a little inappropriate, like bordering on it.
Yeah.
But I find that scene to be a really touching scene and a really good one, well written, well acted. So
yeah. Another favorite of mine, I tend to keep, it sounds like I'm keeping with the more comedic, but again, driven to that meaning, is Martha Plimpton at the diner when he's given her the ring. And she again, a lesson learned, like where he says, this just take the effing ring. And, it's just her, again, that lesson she tells him is just so on point, and it's so funny. And it's such to me, that argument is such a natural feeling argument to me that almost didn't feel too scripted. And that's why I love it.
Yeah, that's a great scene. I mean, I gravitate towards any scene with Michael Rapaport in it. I think it's very interesting. We're talking about this movie.
So relevant.
But talking about this movie 25 years later, and now he's this sort of internet social media sensation about him like swearing at Trump and stuff on Instagram and Twitter, and he's kind of become this thing. But what's funny is it's obvious to us now that that's just who Rapaport is. Like, that's just who he is. Yeah. But he is so delightful in a movie like this, where I feel like Beautiful Girls walks the line of not too much Rapaport. I think if it was all Rapaport, you'd probably be like, all right, enough, Mike, sit down. But they drop him in.
Already the characters are saying, all right, enough, Paul.
But you drop him in enough throughout the movie that you kind of sprinkle him throughout, and I'm constantly entertained. And I think between him and Max Perlich, it's just sort of the guy who I would like to hear more from. But again, you see just like little drops of him throughout the movie, and just this kind of like goofy friend of Matt Dillon's, which again plays from everything that I've learned speaking to Max last week. For an interview, which will be coming out in the After Movie Diner on the 25th anniversary. I'm going to try and make it drop on Tuesday, because Tuesday the 9th is the 25th anniversary officially of Beautiful Girls. But talking to Max last week, the relationship dynamic between him and Matt Dillon in the movie is very much carried over into real life as well. So that probably makes my favorite scene the scene in the diner at the beginning. Not only it's in a diner as well, obviously, but the scene in the diner with like Rapaport, Dillon, and Perlich at the beginning, just for the facial expressions, the quotes, the stuff they're talking about, everything. Like that's my favorite scene, because it's kind of got the two goofballs in it, and I'm a big fan of lovable goofballs. So I've moved that on to favorite characters. Then that's certainly, like, I probably couldn't pick between the two. Max Perlich and Michael Rapaport are probably the two favorite characters. I think Tim Hutton's character is probably the one I'd most like to spend time with in real life, just because he feels like a lot of my friends back in the day, more so than the others. But Rapaport and the Perlich are the ones that I like watching. So Scott, how about you? What are the characters you either most like watching or most like to hang out with?
I'll take the obvious one, and I'll go Rapaport for sure. He's the scene stealer in the movie for me. Every time he's on screen, it's just, what is he saying now? What is going on here?
Right.
And I think I'm going to go in a different direction, and I'm actually going to say Noah Emmerich's character of Mo.
Man. Stolen. Right.
Sorry. Oh, man.
Well, you can have the same one.
Can we swear on this? Can we swear?
You can say whatever the fuck you like.
Fucking Mo.
Fucking Mo.
Yeah, I don't know. I really enjoy him. He's a character who he wants to kind of still be that guy that his friends all are, like having fun and going out and, having a couple of pops or whatever. But he's the only one amongst them who's married with a family. And so he also has a side of sensibility to him where he is kind of waiting for his friends to catch up to him.
Yeah.
And I like that about him.
He's not too complainy either.
He's a good friend.
Yeah. No, but very often you get that male guy who's married in a movie like this, and all he goes on about is like his ball and chain, or, the wife back home, or whatever, driving me crazy and stuff. And I don't feel like he's like that. I feel like Mo loves his family, loves his wife, gets it. The one time he breaks from that is obviously when Dylan is beaten up in the bar and he has to go, defend his honor, such as his honor is. Yeah. And it's funny. Chris Taylor asks in the chat, what do we think of Dylan's cheatery ways in the movie, and the fact that he is unable to let go of the wily seduction of Lauren Holly in the film? What do we think? Do we understand it? Do we condone it?
Of course. I mean, human nature. They were high school sweethearts. They get driven through their adulthood and never leave their hometown. I mean, it's relatable. There's no doubt about it. Again, lesson learned in the end, we hope. I wonder where are they now? Did him and Miro stay together? Did him and Miro stay together? Did they not? Did they even get back together? But, it's like, again, I keep going to each of these guys learned something. They learned a lesson, and that lesson really came to understanding the females around them. So, he was a cheater. Yeah. It's pretty messed up. And it went through the entire timeline of the movie, and it went way before that. And who knows if it continued after the big reveal of what happened. We don't want to give too many spoilers away.
And if there's anything that I understand, why the movie does this, but at the same time, probably in real life, you'd be like, dude, just take a break from women, right now, figure out exactly what it is you want. You know what I mean? But him kind of, the suggestion that him and Mira might reconcile is a little I understand it. You kind of want to wrap it up, but at the same time, in reality, if you weren't sure to begin with, I don't know. Put the brakes on a little bit.
I feel like him and Matt Dillon and Lauren Holly's character are classic representations of that person who was a big deal in high school, and they're not anymore, and they don't know how to deal with it anymore. They don't know how to deal with it, and so the only way for the two of them to hold on to it still is to come together. And I don't know that she'll ever really get it. But I feel like maybe Matt Dillon's character finally figured it out at the end.
Well, I love that Lauren Holly, the whole movie builds up to the idea of there being a high school reunion at the end, which of course none of them end up attending. The only person who attends is Lauren Holly. And she's the one who kind of, her arc is closed off, not by Matt Dillon to some extent, but by the kid now the man.
Peter the Eater
in the high school reunion, because he's the one out of everybody, out of her husband and out of Matt Dillon and everyone who's kind of been saying, come on, get it together. He's the one that really maybe makes her think about her future a bit, I think.
Yeah, the first time I saw it, I was actually... That surprised me, that interaction, because I thought it was going to go the other way. I thought he was going to be like, kind of gawk at her a little bit and try to hit on her. But he actually tells it to her like it is. And it was a good moment. Mean as a snake. You're mean as a snake.
And we're getting loads of comments right now, which I'm super happy about. I love comments and interactivity. Dean Garman on his favorite scene. Dean was super excited we were doing this because he's a big fan of the movie as well. He says, Paul trying to make Jan jealous in the bar is my favorite scene. Dancing to Be For Real. What's with all this Al Capone shit?
Al Capone shit. Oh, man. That was a good one. And I even love, in that scene, I love Martha Plimpton's character, and I forget the actor's name that plays her boyfriend at the time. I love that interaction with the bartender and all of it, and them leaving. It's just that is a great scene. It's kind of loaded. And not to mention, isn't it Afghan wigs up on stage too? It's just live music playing. It's the actual band. so 90s, so perfect. That is a great scene.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of bands in movies. That I think it's Overboard with the band that there's a lead singer of the band is singing Jim Dandy. Is that Overboard? I think so.
Yes, Jim. Yep.
Jim Dandy on a mountain top. And ever since that scene in Overboard, I'm like, oh, bands in movies. And then what was really funny, just to sidetrack a little bit, one of our mutual friends, Kim and I's mutual friends, Herbert Russell, is in a new movie that's up on Amazon called Hollywood.con. And in the trailer, they've got Billy Bob Thornton's band up on stage. Random cameo from Billy Bob Thornton. He's not in the movie, but the band that he plays with is up on stage. So at some point, I've got to roll up my sleeves and kind of do a blog all about bands in movies. But this would Beautiful Girls definitely has a great live music scene, which is awesome. So Chris Taylor says that Michael Rappaport for him is a favorite. Stuck in his youth and never growing up. Special shout out to the stunning Elle Macpherson, that Saint Bernard. Bless that dog. She's amazing. Elle Macpherson, the Saint Bernard. I would like to watch a spin-off with her where she gets, I don't know, lost in San Francisco or something. Isn't that a kid's movie about animals that get lost in San Francisco? Incredible Journey 2, I think, Lost in San Francisco. I would watch that. Bending of the Ways. And then Dean Garman says, did any of us see Young Adult? He always feels like it's a great partner film to Beautiful Girls, with Charlize being like the Diane Smalls character. I have seen it. I haven't seen it in a long time. I have seen it. I think it was the follow-up movie that Jason Reitman did after Up in the Air, I think. So I'd love to watch that again.
I've not seen it.
And then Sammy Taylor, Chris's wife, says that Peter the Eater is her favorite character. So that's awesome.
Driving home the lesson.
Yes, indeed. He has to crop up at the end and just give her what for. And then let's go through some of our favorite quotes. And I feel like you guys know the movie in terms of quotes way better than I do.
Oh, gosh.
So Kim and Scott, just bat it back and forth. Let's have a quote-a-thon here.
Oh, gosh. Channel 38 is showing Rich Man, Poor Man tonight. All
Rich
12
Man, Poor
parts.
Man? All 12 parts?
Oh, man, I don't want to go to this thing anymore.
364 days of the year, I do dick. and the day...
That scene is one I should have mentioned when we were talking about our favorite scenes, because me and my coworker, we do that all the time. And then inevitably we get into the conversation of, oh man, do you have any old tapes that you recorded stuff off TV from? And of course I've, still have some at my parents where I recorded movies off TV in the 90s and all the great TV station bumpers in between the commercials and everything like that. That reminded me of that. You can't tape Rich Man, Poor Man. You got to watch it at home with all the commercials and everything, just like everybody else. It's classic.
I love that. You can't tape it there. There was a certain moment where that was true, right? Where there was an experience of watching it all together, like the Super Bowl or something. Mm-hmm. And Leslie says that her favorite sequence is Rappaport plowing to Flock of Seagulls. And his endless plowing sequence, whether he's crying and angry or crying and happy, I'm there for it. I get that Rappaport's a dick. I understand why Plimpton wants nothing to do with him at this point. But man, I'm there for sad sack Rappaport.
That's a good part when he's uncovering the door.
Yeah, yes. and also just the plowing scenes are a big thing for me. Backtracking a little bit to favorite characters and roles in the film, going back to Dylan, but in the natural, what they do as a profession, that is nostalgia for me growing up in New England. Family members, my cousin plowed every snowstorm. I used to wake up early as a little kid and plow with him before school would get called, whether it's late or canceled. And we'd plow at 5 to 7 in the morning, and I'd either get dropped off at school or I'd get to keep plowing with him. Mm-hmm. And some of those lines about that, someone's got to go sand his lots. When Dylan's in the hospital, and just all that kind of speak that's so New England, or at least Northern, it wasn't even filmed in Massachusetts. I know we'll get to that, which is so sad to me that they couldn't just pull that off. But that is actually a very late lesson learning of mine, is that it wasn't even filmed where they're meant to have been. But yeah, some of those little lines, the plowing scenes, the diner scene with the three guys, and it's great. I love all the lines, lines.
And the last scene we should talk about is the scene with Rapport and Tim Hutton in the room of women. When he's like, I keep expecting to check the refrigerator for severed heads or whatever. That whole sequence is a great one, right?
Wow, such a beautiful girl can make you dizzy, like you've been drinking Jack and Coke all morning.
We don't have Coke in it, but this is
no. Should we do a little 25th anniversary cheers?
So, in honor of the scene when Uma Thurman comes into the bar, and they're all trying to be very sexist and talk about all the kind of fruity and or flavorful shots that women apparently like in this town. And then Uma goes, no, whiskey.
Yeah.
Making her the
they're
coolest
like,
character.
the way it rolls out, you guys want to do a shot? Oh yeah. Chicks like num-nums and melon balls. And she goes, whiskey. What are you talking about? Whiskey.
So we all have some whiskey here. Scott didn't think that he had any whiskey in his house at all.
Until
he found one of those mini bar bottles. And it's really good whiskey, right? It's like 12-year-old aged
Caledonia.
Edgeador. Wow.
Yeah. My parents brought this back home from Scotland for me.
And I was like, you sure you want to use it on this? And he's like, maybe I was saving it for this. So
Leslie's comment, I love how they all kind of fix their hair before they're getting introduced to Uma.
Oh, yeah. That's
right.
And Kevin, his mustache.
Yes. Well, because he always wears hats, because Max is bald or balding at this point. Anyway, so before we go on, here is to 25 years of Beautiful Girls and this movie and sharing this moment with all of you. Cheers.
I guess I'll do the whole thing.
Think. Yeah. Oh. Well, yeah, I'm a sipper.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
I got to chase it.
You're so bad. So Dylan, Scott.
Yeah, right? I don't want to.
Terrible.
The only reason I don't want to shut this is I want to drink it for the rest of the show. I want to be able to sip it. And this is all I have. I don't have the bottle here with me, so
I still got my PBR.
Yeah, I've got the bottle, John, in this room.
Yeah, Kim's got the bottle. I'm bottleless, and it looks like from Kim's glass I have the smallest amount. So there we go. Anyway, well done, Scott. A round of applause for Scott Toomey, everybody.
Thank you very much. I haven't had liquor in a very, very long time. I can't remember the last time I did a shot of liquor.
Dina is going to be picking you up off the carpet later on.
No. I don't think it'll be that
bad. And Kim's sister Laurie is in the chat now. Hey, Laurie. She's saying, how about some Sweet Caroline?
Oh, man.
Now, I believe that's because your dad was a big... it's gone out of my... This happens all the time to me.
Neil, baby.
Neil Diamond fan. That you guys used to sing that anyway. Or was it predicated on this movie, or was it something you all sang anyway?
No. I mean, that's childhood for me. That's, yeah. I feel I've heard that this movie was the one that kind of jump-started the singing of Sweet Caroline in that ba way, but I don't know that that's true either. I'm not really...
I've got to imagine that the singing of Sweet Caroline, singing of Sweet Caroline probably inspired them to have it in this movie. That's more how I feel it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I have a theory.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's correct.
I love it. Let's hear it.
So you guys may or may not know this. Kim, I know maybe doesn't or maybe doesn't want to acknowledge it, but during the 7th inning stretch at Red Sox game at Fenway Park,
yeah,
they sing Sweet Caroline.
Yeah.
This movie predates that by a year.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if whoever was in charge of the music at Fenway saw the movie and was like, well, it takes place in New England. That's a cool way to sing it. Maybe we'll just give it a shot and see what happens. And now they do it all the time and I'm tired of it. But
yep.
I would really like to find out if that's true or not.
Yeah.
I'm tired of almost all the music that they play at ball games because they play the same ones every time. And I just think to myself, come on, guys. That's like, I love the fact that the players obviously change their walk-in songs a lot. Like every couple of years, they'll change their walk-in songs. But, whether it's YMCA or Sinatra at the end or whatever, when you go to Yankees games, I'm like, it's great and everything, but at a certain point, come on, let's mix it up. Let's change it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we brought it up a little earlier, but it's an interesting movie, right? Because it's called Beautiful Girls. It's essentially about a bunch of guys, but I do feel that the guys mostly are the butt of the jokes or the butt of the issues throughout the movie. It's not pro the guy's behavior in that sense. And I also feel like a lot of it is commented on or seen through the eyes of the female characters in the movie. Like, it wouldn't work if it was just guys all the time talking about the stuff. The scenes that work are the scenes with, either Martha Plimpton or Mira Sorvino or Rosie O'Donnell, those characters, and even Uma Thurman and Tim Hutton and stuff in the Ice Shed. Those scenes are the ones that really kind of nail the guy characters and give them their moment to kind of grow and change. Yeah. But we, between the two of you, like, how do you see the roles of like the guys and the women in the film? And I guess Kim, as a female, what draws you into the movie in terms of the battle of the sexes element in the movie?
Well, it's similar. It's a little bit of what I was saying earlier. It's that these guys are kind of flailing through their lives in these kind of uncertain times, and their early midlife crises of being a late 20-something male coming back for a reunion. Only one's coming back. They're all kind of in their hometown. And it's like their uncertainty of like, what is in my future? Like, what am I meant to be? Am I the guy that I thought I was? And again, I think all these instances with the females in their lives, one being married with children and being so much more of an adult than his counterparts and his friends, but wanting to kind of still live their less mature lives. These lessons come from the women. It comes from these relationships that they have. And that's what I feel like. That's why I feel like this movie is very naturally written. It's so naturally written to me. Like, there's these little moments, and some of these scenes are the smallest scenes too, that I just feel like could have been unscripted and could have been like, just let's roll with it. And maybe that was inserted in, I don't know, but it seems like that to me.
And as a woman, is it tiring to just be surrounded by floundering guys for like the first 30 years of your life until some of them start figuring it out?
I grew up, it's funny. I have 3 sisters and no brothers. And my family is all women with men that have married into it. My dad had 3 sisters. My mom had 5 sisters. We had no uncles that were direct siblings of our parents. We were kind of a family, a matriarchal family, and driven by women like our whole lives. We didn't even have grandfathers growing up. They died young. But at the same time, I was surrounded by men, like my cousins, some of my best friends growing up were boys. Like I had boys as some of my closest friends, especially younger and into my teen years. And did I not get really close girlfriends that I had? And this kind of, it brings me back to those times being, I grew up like a tomboy anyway. And I don't know, these guys just seem so natural to me. They feel to me, and I think my sisters and some of my friends that know this film and love it with me agree that there's this nostalgia about this group of people. Like that, we're like, we kind of know those guys. Like we kind of grew up with them, or they were in our family, or one reminds me of my cousin, or what have you. And so it doesn't make me uncomfortable at all. I know there's some parts of the film that, especially nowadays, could, the male female relationships shown in the film, the younger, the older, generational crossovers there are a little teetering on the inappropriate lines, but it doesn't make me uncomfortable because still I do find that to be human nature.
And Scott, I often go back and forth on this, but I think, like, do we as guys know any men like this, or do I feel like they're all archetypes that are talking to a certain personality in a guy, and most guys can see themselves in probably multiple of the characters? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say it's probably the latter. I don't I don't know a whole lot of dudes like this. When I turned 30, most of my high school friends had already gotten married at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't. There was like a handful of us maybe that didn't or that weren't. And at this point, I lost my train of thought. I don't know what's happening right now.
It was that shot. It was the
It's
shot.
so good. It's the shot. He's still really.
We'll get through it. But yeah, no, I can't say that I've really known too many. I think you're right. It's mostly archetypes, amalgamations of a lot of different kinds of guys into a singular character of the movie.
Yeah, it's funny. We were watching High Fidelity again recently. We had just come off watching the Hulu TV series, which was fantastic, which obviously gender flips and changes some of the characters around. And that was a really interesting take on it. And I loved that. I thought that was really great. But we were also watching the John Cusack movie, and just kind of some of the stuff he goes through and some of the stuff he talks about in terms of relationships kind of rang very similar to this movie. And we sort of watched them close together as well recently. And, I started to kind of think back, and I'm like, well, no, there were people in my life growing up that had elements of this. I mean, obviously it's slightly different for me growing up in England, because there is a slightly different, the English laddish sensibility, what we call like a laddish or blokey sensibility. It is different. It's not that we don't recognize the guys in Beautiful Girls. Like, I get it. I understand, like, especially blue collar or lower middle class kind of small town America is pretty similar to kind of blue collar small town Britain. But there's just, I think probably the laddish guys, the blokey guys in England, when they get, a few beers in them and they're talking about women, are probably even more disrespectful than the guys in here. I hate to say it.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think that when they're talking about like serious relationships and trying to take the plunge and trying to figure out what they want to do and are probably more closed off and more cold and more maybe quietly neurotic than the characters are in this film. They're probably similar more to the characters in Diner, which is another kind of movie that came out that's kind of about a coming of age thing, but obviously set in the 50s. But in terms of like recognizing the guys, like I say, the one that kind of rings closest to the guy that everyone I knew wanted to be in our early 20s, it's probably Timothy Hutton. It's like, how do I live in New York, play the piano in a bar, have an incredibly attractive lawyer fancy me and want to be with me kind of thing.
It's kind of a brooding artist.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, how do I wear a long coat, long black coat, and kind of shuffle around? We all wanted to be a combination of either John Cusack in every movie John Cusack's ever done, or Tim Hutton in this movie.
Without the bad snow shoveling technique.
Right. But in all honesty, we're probably more like either Mo or Max Perlich. Like, that's like, we're more like Noah Emmerich or Max Perlich. Like, we're either more kind of just the quiet, faithful kind of guy, or the little like nerdy, hey, can I be friends with you kind of guy that people are like, oh, all right, whatever. Like, we're probably more those guys than we are the like uber cool, nothing matters, hey, whatever kind of characters. But it's funny. And then that kind of moves neatly on to when I was talking with Max last week. One of the things that kind of hit me about the film is that it's a very pure ensemble film. There isn't like one leading character in it. However, in terms of leading men at the time, and in terms of who the movie is trying to position as like the leading man, it's interesting because it has two. It has Tim Hutton and it has Matt Dillon, both not necessarily heroes, but both leaders of their own stories in the movie. And you could probably pull out Tim Hutton's story on one side and Matt Dillon's story on the other. And while they connect at the beginning when Tim comes home, and while they connect at the end, obviously, once what happens to Matt Dillon's character happens, there isn't that much crossover between the two storylines in the thing. So I guess talk a little bit about kind of the Timothy Hutton, Matt Dillon, two leading men dynamic of the movie and how it works for you guys. Kim, start off, or Scott, whoever has a...
Yeah, I mean... It brings me to that when they have that truck ride together too, and you can tell there's distance between these two guys that want to stay friends, But, the whole Matt Dillon, like when you said you were going to come visit, you're not, you didn't come, what happened? I don't know what happened. And it's just that absent-minded male thing of like, well, I've, life, like I've been up here and, I'll come this spring. Like it's this kind of flighty sense of like, they're trying to figure out, I think, really who they are, why they are where they are. And I don't know. I mean, their stories aren't too dissimilar from each other. They're figuring out, like, I think dilemmas that, and I use that plural for both of them, dilemmas that have kind of been holding them back. Timothy Hutton has this great girlfriend and, she's successful. And in a way, like, is that his meal ticket? Can he just kind of be happy with her? Because he might be able to be that piano player, which is really all he wants to be, and still be with this great woman. But is he really in love with her? And is that really the life that he wants anyway? And Matt is struggling. Well, his character, the Birdman, is, like
the Birdman,
struggling with multiple relationships that he can't shake. And he's, also not even sure that the one he's in is the right one. Until, not to give things away. And, just that struggle, they're very similar, right? They're just like kind of figuring out, these guys are figuring out who they want to be. And so I don't think it's all that different, the challenges that they're both seeing. And they relate to each other, but there's a distance between the two of them. There's no doubt.
I've spent some time, so I rewatched the movie a couple of nights ago, and I've spent some time trying to figure out like which of these friends is the glue that holds the group together. You know what I mean? And I can't figure out who it is. Like, I can't figure out how, because Timothy Hutton's character and Matt Dillon's character are very different. Matt Dillon was the star athlete. He was a big shot in high school. Timothy Hutton's character strikes me as more of the artsy type. So I'm trying to figure out which of the guys was the one that kind of, brought that group together. I feel like it might have been Mo, because he seems like the type that's just like friends with everybody.
Yeah.
And that's how they came together. But that's one of the things that I've been trying to figure out like the last couple of days since I rewatched it.
Well, Mo's where they gather too, like Mo's kind of that father figure to these guys. Like it's almost like he's older than them, right? Like he's he's not, he's the same class as they were, but you almost think he's like the college friend that, is married already. He's the one who picks him up when he comes into town.
Yep.
They're the ones that host the pre-party, there's that, and there's that adultness in that, like having a family, they're able to host as adults and have all their friends gather. But it's very, it's like kind of like a father figure to these guys that relationship holds. I don't know, Scott, there's a part of me that wants to go back and say, I think Kev is the one that holds them all together. I think it's Max Perlick's character.
Could be. We'll never know, I guess.
Totally could be. My feeling is this. If I'm remembering it correctly, Dylan is the only one who talks about coming to see Hutton in New York, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that they've never kind of made it happen, right? And obviously from a story perspective, Dylan is the one who was a big shot in high school, stayed there, and is no longer a big shot and is facing this, what do I do with the rest of my life then?
Yeah.
And Tim Hutton is the character who got out. He got out of the town, got out of the small town, went
doing what he loves.
Doing what he loves, but is still facing the same dilemma. Like, what now, right? So they have that in common. I feel like even though, yes, one was a star athlete, one was probably more into kind of music or just hanging out with people or whatever in high school, I feel that they were probably the friends. Like they were the guys and the group formed around them. And obviously, Rappaport and Perlich are now they're employed by Dylan, right? They both work with Dylan or whatever.
The kind of guys you keep around because they're
fun. They work with Mo.
Paul's a partner. Paul's a partner. Kev is their employee. I work with him.
Okay. But like,
get it right, John.
I will. Yeah. Sorry about that. That's why I had you guys on. You are much bigger. Have much greater knowledge of the movie than I do. But I feel that the division in the group came between Dylan and Hutton, and I think they have the reason why their storylines are almost separate is that they have the hardest time because they were probably the better of friends back in the day. They have the harder time with the fact that he's now back in town. Everyone else can just be like, oh, yeah, great, he's back in town, and we can just kind of fall back into whatever rhythms we had because they're not sitting around with their lives going, where's my buddy? Why is he in New York and why am I up here and why is everything crap, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I read the movie in terms of the two characters. And, I don't know what to make of that or what it is. Chris says, Chris Taylor in the group has had a couple of great points. First of all, he said, nice to see Vince Taylor Pruitt and John Carroll Lynch as a pair of barmen and not serial killers. Because they both played serial killers in a variety of movies.
Wow.
John Carroll Lynch, obviously, in Zodiac. And the only one I can think of Vince Taylor Pruitt isn't he the serial killer in Identity?
I think so.
Talking about John Cusack.
Right.
Easy on the stinky stuff. I'm a proprietor now, all right?
Yeah, right?
We got apps.
We got apps. And the funny thing is, 25 years later, we've all got apps, but it's not what he means. We have different apps. But we've all got apps. And then the other comment Chris says is he's never looked at a copy of Razzle the same way since Rosie O'Donnell's speech on porn mags.
Oh my God. I was laughing at that.
Let's talk about that because it's interesting. Again, from comments Max made in the interview that'll be going up next week, I get the feeling that in terms of strong personalities that are both the same on screen as they are off screen, Rosie O'Donnell and Michael Rappaport are cut from the same cloth. In other words, they turn up on set and they are who they are. And in fact, Rosie O'Donnell, who was obviously sort of very famous at the time, literally was only on set for a few of the scenes she did. She kind of flew in, did her bit, and flew out again. Whereas the rest of the cast got to Minneapolis about anywhere between 2 months and a few weeks, depending on who it was, in the lead up to the movie. Perlich tells a great story, and I don't want to spoil it too much, about him and Dylan competing for record store pickup. So Perlich got to Minneapolis like a month and a half before the movie started and was like troweling the record shops because he was a big fan of Cuban jazz. And when Dylan rang him up and because they'd both been in Drugstore Cowboy together and was like, hey, how's Minneapolis? He was like, oh, I'm doing a bomb around all the record stores. Apparently Dylan was like, I'm there tomorrow. Flew in and started telling the record store owners that he could afford a lot more expensive prices for the record. So apparently he jacked up the record price. But they were all hanging out except O'Donnell, who kind of flew in, did her bit, and flew out again. Yeah. But they said that when she flew in, she was definitely like that character in the same way Rappaport was. Like you drop her in and there she is. She's kind of loud and bombastic and whatever.
Yep.
And I do feel that the scene in the drugstore where she's looking at the porn mag is, it feels like something from a stand-up act that she was like, let me just do this. Like it'll perfectly fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a bit. I feel like all of her stuff in the movie are kind of bits that are kind of dropped.
Well, she does, her pieces are very driven by like having a monologue of sorts, like she, even when they're consoling Mira Sorvino in the hair salon, she really is telling this story and it's all her telling, kind of telling her what may become of her, which is hilarious. But her pieces are very monologue-y to me. They're driven by her. And then she kind of, she leaves the scene and it goes on with more chatter.
And was she a stand-up? I know she hosted like a daytime talk show, and I know she did movies. So. She was a stand-up. That's where she comes from. That world, yeah. So that kind of makes a little sense. It's kind of like those early Dennis Leary movies. He gets dropped into movies, and he's like Dennis Leary, and then he like it's kind of like that a bit.
The thing that is interesting to me about Rosie O'Donnell's character, to these guys, she doesn't pass the eye test. And so it's almost, as she's walking across the street, it's almost as if everything she said to those two guys, Tim Hutton and Matt Dillon, goes in one ear and out the other. Nice tits, great ass. That's all they think about after she's done. And then it takes somebody like Uma Thurman, who, does pass their eye test and tells them these things. There's only, 4 things that I need to hear before I go to bed. Good night, sweet girl. And, this kind of thing. And it finally gets through to them when they hear it from a girl that they're trying to attain. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I always found that to be pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I love the way the scene is written, because it's not some big spiel about, Rosie O'Donnell's scene is a big spiel about, it's not what's on the outside, it's what's on the inside.
Yep.
And the other part of her spiel is, if you're looking for the big TNA, it's going to come on a big woman. It's not going to come on a tiny waif of a woman. It's going to, if you're looking for the curves,
naturally.
right? At least not naturally. If you're looking for the curves, then the female is going to be generally curvy, right?
Yep.
So they're kind of like the 2 points. She's like, if your ideal of beauty includes these attributes, then you're going to have to also love internally, because these attributes
it's not going to last. Yeah,
don't tend to appear. But what I like about the Uma Thurman scenes is that not only throughout the movie is it her personality that is ultimately more attractive to the guys, meaning, yes, she's obviously a beautiful woman, but from her saying like, whiskey, we have shots of whiskey, from that to being like the woman who can hang out in like the ice shed and talk philosophy and love and sex and all that stuff.
Helping out Rappaport at the bar,
to the woman who's
such a knucklehead.
Right. Such a knucklehead. To the, her just being like, I need to hear some nice words at the end of the night, and you'd believe how far that would go.
Yep.
It's her personality that is the epitome of like, oh man, she's so cool. You know what I mean? Like, she's just a cool, it's like Patricia Arquette in True Romance. It's not so much, yes, she's a beautiful woman, but she's just so cool. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of guys want,
like me, John, right?
Like you. No, totally like Kim. Seriously, like Kim. Like Kim is cool. Kim is a cool chick.
My wife is super cool.
Dina is super cool. I agree.
The whole reason we got together was because she listed The Terminator as her favorite movie on her dating page.
Yes.
Come on.
That was it. That's all it took.
Listen, and all it took was me talking about a Star of Phantasm signed ukulele, and Kim was like, I love Phantasm. And I was like, what? There's a person other than me who's heard of Phantasm? Boom, done. Where do I sign? So, but no, I mean, I'm serious. Like, the way it's written, the way that's written is really good, because it's not written that they're all gaga for her just because she's like, Uma Thurman.
Yeah.
It's written that she's like all of the cool things about Uma Thurman as well. And I think that's throughout her career, she's kind of embodied that. It's more about her personality than it is about her looks in so many of the films she's in. And that's awesome. Let's transition then. There's a couple of other things I kind of wanted to bring up. One is, the big center of this movie is Timothy Hutton and Natalie Portman's character. And I watched this recently with the vein of in the, post Me Too movement, but also Natalie Portman did speak in an article last year about how this and the movie The Professional, or Leon the Professional, depending on how you know it, made her feel as a young woman in regards to her sexuality and being somewhat sexualized on screen by older men in those two movies, and how that made her feel personally. I did watch the movie with sort of an eye to that and being like, is it a movie that we should even be celebrating? And should we be kind of looking at it? Ultimately, regardless of what went on behind the scenes, or regardless of how it made someone feel, and this is not to discount any of that. People have every legitimacy to feel how they feel about the movie. In terms of just watching the movie as entertainment and the way that it is written, I don't think it crosses any lines that make it problematic today, personally. If anything, I think that the fact that Natalie Portman is a younger woman in the movie and still outsmarts 95% of the men in it is trying to make the point of just how childish and fucking dumb men can be well into their 20s.
Yep.
And not only that, but they talk about it from a literary standpoint. They don't talk about it from a sexual standpoint. Even when they talk about waiting till she's 18 to be together, they're really talking about this, or she is anyway, from a love / young girl infatuation kind of perspective. Yep. She's not talking about him being like hunky or, losing her virginity to him or anything like that. Now, from his perspective, he's a little bit more, dumb male about it, but that's the point of the thing. So without going into necessarily too much the negativity, because again, it's about what we see on screen. We can have different moral opinions to how we feel about what went on behind the scenes or what Natalie Portman felt about the characters. But in terms of on scenes, like how does that relationship speak to you guys? Kim, if you want to go first, just as the woman of the group.
I want to disagree with what you said, John, about Timothy Hutton's character. Is I don't really think that he goes into that more guy perspective regarding the relationship or, the banter back and forth with him and Natalie Portman's character.
I meant more when he's in the bar and he sat talking about when she turns 18 and all that kind of stuff. And then also the sequence with Michael Rappaport when he says, like, if she can, what does he say? What's the horrible?
She can cut her own food.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
She's fair game.
Sorry, Kim. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that, but even that scene when he's talking to Mo about this young girl and he's kind of saying, Willie, she was a zygote when you were in the 7th grade. I think he's trying to give his perspective of he's not talking about it as this sexual relationship. He's talking about it as a human being and talking about her as a human being. He's actually countering Mo's guy, come on, she's young. You shouldn't even be talking about this shit. And he's like, but hold on, she's a person and she's going to grow up and she's going to be amazing. And that's where I want to counter what you said. He was just going on like a regular guy. He never really does that. He doesn't.
He actually says it's not a sexual thing.
Exactly. That's a line of his. So I don't think that's where I want to disagree. He doesn't really ever regress into where his guys are all coming from, where Paul and his supermodels on the wall are coming from. He's not there. And that's why I do think it is different. And I don't find it today, having watched it from the beginning, and maybe that's why I don't find it so inappropriate today, because I've lived this movie and really watched it. I don't know that, more than a year or two has ever gone by in 25 years that I did not watch this movie. So I know it too well. So I think it's hard for me to go, there's nothing wrong with it. But I think human nature, I think things happen. I think, as a young girl, you see older men and go, oh, I want to be with a man like that someday. And I think that's kind of what's happening there. So I don't really find it inappropriate. I know people will disagree with that, but like I said, maybe that's because of my affinity for the film from the get-go. And I was only, 19, I think, when this film came out. I never looked at that as a 19-year-old, I don't recall, and being like, ooh, that's weird and not good. I think I thought of it as human nature.
Yeah, and listen, I totally agree with that. I just meant that compared to Natalie Portman, he doesn't talk about it in quite the highfalutin terms that she talks about it. But I know,
agree. I agree with that. Yes.
I know exactly what you mean. And Dean says in the group, he's like, I don't see any pedophile tendency there, although obviously that joke is made in the movie when Mo sees him on the ice rink. But he says, Tim Hutton Tim Hutton envies her youth, which I think is a really good way to put it. Yep. He envies her youth. And also you said something great, Kim, which is, he does say, she's going to grow up to be amazing. If she's this incredible now.
He tells her that.
Yeah, you're going to grow up to be amazing. And so, I'm with you. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. And I certainly don't think that Tim Hutton is overtly sexualizing her. No. But I think he's probably sexualizing her maybe more than she's sexualizing him. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. Scott, what about yourself, sir?
I think if you look at it through a 2021 lens, maybe it comes off as a little bit inappropriate. But I don't know. I think there's a time in every young man's life where they maybe meet a girl who's, 4 or 5 years younger than them or whatever. Not quite as much of a gap as there is between Tim Hutton and Natalie Portman in the movie. But I think there comes a time where you always meet a girl who's, significantly younger, and you're just like, oh man, like she's so cool and she's so awesome. And if only she was my age and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I think it's a kind of like a natural thing.
No, completely.
That happens.
And I think, while I am definitely pro a better working environment for everybody in reality, and everything that the Me Too movement and other movements have stood for, in terms of reality, I do think art needs to speak to emotions and real situations that do happen, especially during adolescence and so on, where both men and women, as they're growing up, experience certain feelings or, looking up to people or, whatever it is, or infatuations or love or whatever, that they either can't explain or need to explain or whatever. And part of art is showing that so that whoever's feeling that thing doesn't feel so alone. Mm-hmm. Or showing it, in the case that this movie does as well, in order to make points about both characters. Because the way it's shown makes points about Tim Hutton, and it also makes points about her. And so I think we walk a fine line between, reality and fiction. Fiction and art have to be able to show sometimes things that society, when acted upon, is deemed negative or inappropriate. Yeah. But when thought about or felt about, needs to be talked about in order for people to not, when they're 13 and they infatuate over someone older,
I agree.
Don't feel weird about it, or don't feel like it's the wrong thing to do when they're going through puberty to suddenly have feelings about older people or different people or whatever.
And let's not skim over the fact that, in the movie, Timothy Hutton his character is the one that ultimately is just like, we can't do this. I don't want to be a poo. I don't want to be a poo.
Yeah, I think Dean said in the chat, later poo. And Chris Taylor says that the Christopher Robin and Pooh story is absolutely heartbreaking. And I love that it's a movie that can reference Winnie the Pooh and Romeo and Juliet all in the same sequence.
No literary references left unturned.
Nope.
No literary references left unturned. Exactly. So a couple of things just before we wrap it up. So in the next kind of 10, 15 minutes before we wrap this thing up at 5:15, let us talk about, first of all, Scott, this is really going to be you talking about this. The Massachusetts of it all. So it's a movie that's, it takes place in a small town, blue collar Massachusetts town, right? Obviously in the midst of winter. I think we were talking recently, like it's post New Year, but pre high school reunion. And it's probably just in that kind of gap, January, February time. Mm-hmm. And,
see, I think of that as November. Like I think of high school reunions always being the Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah, because everybody's going to be home.
Everyone's home for the holidays. A lot of high school reunions happen.
Yeah.
But they don't mention Thanksgiving or Christmas or anything like that.
Well, they do. They do mention Christmas. When Dylan and Hutton are driving in the truck, he asks them, "What'd you do for Christmas?" And then he says he went up to Tracy's parents and met her parents in Pennsylvania.
All right, so maybe that's why it feels like after the New Year.
Yeah,
okay,
I feel like it's after the New Year.
Yeah.
But it's obviously filmed in Minneapolis or Minnesota, a small town in Minnesota, and it stars almost 98% New York actors. I looked them all up. And apart from Max Perlich, which I believe he's from Ohio, I think everyone else is from either upstate New York or New York City. Almost all of them are. Yeah. And most of them make no attempt to do a Massachusetts accent. So,
which I like. I actually like that.
Okay. So Scott, Chris Taylor says he thought it was February as the chemist has a Valentine's poster in the window.
Okay.
There we go. Details, friends.
Good detail.
Way to go.
Way to go, Chris, figuring it all out. And that would make sense in the lead, like to be talking about beautiful women or whatever in the lead up to Valentine's. So, Scott, in your best Massachusetts accent, talk to us about what they do right about growing up in Mass and what they get wrong.
All right, guys.
But give it.
Fucking tell you a story, okay? We got the Celtics gear hanging up in the bedroom, in Timothy Hudson's bedroom. That's honestly the only thing in the movie that you can see that it's like, oh, this takes place in New England. There's Celtics stuff on the wall. Yeah. And Hutton's character wears a Celtics jacket, which I do appreciate. Other than that, the only those Celtics references, and if you look it up, you see that the writer grew up in Needham, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes east of where I grew up.
Yeah.
Those are the only things that really scream out, oh, this movie takes place in New England. If you take those away, it almost seems like any other blue collar town in either the Northeast or even the North in general.
Because Dylan is a hockey prodigy, right? He was like his big high school game was not football or baseball; it was hockey, right? He was a big hockey thing.
He was a hockey guy, so that's Northeast or Midwest or whatever. So
although you have to go fairly north in New York to be like a hockey guy, don't you? Yeah. I mean, not to like hockey, but to be like, you would have to be like Buffalo, Rochester kind of area, right?
Yeah, I grow up playing on the ponds and stuff.
Right.
But I kind of like that it's not that you can't tell that it takes place in Massachusetts unless you really do the research and figure it out.
Yeah.
I like that the actors didn't try to do awful Boston accents or anything like that.
Park the car in the harbor.
So I think it makes it a more accessible movie to people.
Right.
You can maybe you grew up in Wisconsin and this reminds me of where I grew up. I don't know guys that fish inside of ice fishing huts. I don't know too many of them.
No.
But otherwise, it definitely reminds me of growing up in a small town in Massachusetts. The camaraderie between the guys. I mean, I've got friends from high school that, I went off to college and lost touch with a lot of them. But now that I'm, back in the area and living around, it's like we never, it's like we've been talking the whole time or been staying in touch the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have much else to add.
I agree with Scott in that I'm glad they didn't try to play that through and really try to manipulate, because it just often will fall flat, or it's something in the movie to talk about, like, oh, that is so not the right accent. Or so I agree. I think if they really tried to play that out, I don't know that it would have been successful.
And this movie came out before that really became a thing, because I think I would point to Good Will Hunting as being like that first movie where they, made the movie in Massachusetts and tried to have the characters have very thick, Southie accents. And for this one, it came out before that, so it wasn't really a thing at that point. And I'm glad. I don't.
Yeah, me too.
Because you could, with all the actors they picked, they're all great, and the chemistry that they have is phenomenal. I think it is what really makes the movie so great. But if, Timothy Hutton was trying to do a Boston accent, I would have just taken me completely out of the movie.
And even at one point, he's wearing, I forget the name of the company. It's almost like a company, or maybe it's like a local store or something. But he's wearing a Minneapolis shirt at some point. Like the back of his shirt says like Minneapolis something or Minnesota something, which I don't know whether it was a mistake or whether he just walked on set being like, I'm going to wear this. And I don't know what happened there. Just a big shout out to Berkeley Bookworm or Barkley Bookworm in the chat. Allison made it. For people who don't know, and I should probably pimp this right now, Scott does a fantastic synthwave DJ set on a Friday night over on Twitch. Retro Futurism 101 with Michael Knight. He is Michael Knight when he wears his shades, and he spins some awesome tunage on a Friday night. So If you were a fan of the After Movie Diner, but you also like synthwave tunes, come join us on a Friday night. And it's a pleasure to see Barclay Bookworm here with us right now to wrap up this video. Let us just quickly talk. I have a hypothesis, and I just want to see how you both feel about it and how people in the chat feel about it. So get ready, people in the chat. Is this a cult movie? And let me explain. Most cult movies we think about being exploitation, B movies, genre film. We think about them as being movies that weren't big at the time, but kind of gained an audience over time. But a film like Beautiful Girls, this is kind of what I mean. It's probably not going to be, if someone's like, oh, what are your top 10 movies or whatever, it's not going to be on anyone's best of lists. It's not going to be the thing that people are like, oh yeah, it's my top 10 favorite movie. But when it's mentioned, like when I started to bring it up as we were leading up to the 25th anniversary, and because I know Kim is a big fan of the movie and we've watched it together, like Kim says, probably every year, sometimes multiple times a year. It's our cozy go-to Sunday afternoon movie. I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if I kind of started emailing a bunch of people to see if they wanted to do interviews and stuff, and that's how we got the Max Perlich interview. But when I started mentioning that online, I suddenly got a ton of people being like, oh man, Beautiful Girls, love that movie, and started like quoting it and things like that. So is there a place for cult films that aren't necessarily about, blood and guts or, sci-fi stuff or action movies starring, B movie action stars? Is there a place where something like a Beautiful Girls or a Singles or a Diner or a Breakfast Club or something like that, which is really just about people talking and about groups of friends, is there a place where that can be a cult movie? Scott, what do you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, there's anytime a movie has like a small, rabid fan base, I think that qualifies that film as a cult film because it has a cult following.
Right.
I understand that the normal definition of a cult movie would be, like horror movies, sci-fi, stuff like that, genre films and whatnot. But I think a movie like this could definitely qualify as a cult movie because I think it does have a small following of people that really, really enjoy it, like the three of us that watch it every year, and just makes them feel good.
Yeah. And Dean says in the group, he says, I never thought of it as a cult, but more of a hidden gem.
That's how I think. I spoke to you about this earlier, John. I never thought about it like that. I just never did. It never. I'm just like, no, it's not. No, it's not. But thinking about it and what the definition of that could be, it's true though. It is that hidden gem, but there is this following, and I know it in different groups of mine. It's not just that high school group of friends of mine. As I've gotten older, I've found pockets of people that are like, oh my God, me and this group of friends of mine love that movie, or me and my family, or and so I learning that along the way all these years. I feel like it can be in that realm. I really do. Yeah, I never thought of it though.
Well, you see, I always think of it, and again, interestingly, because again, we talked earlier about the kind of the battle of the sexes, and there is a sort of sexist way that people refer to certain films, right? They refer to them as like chick flicks, right? And it's always different. That's a difficult genre of film. It's just a difficult genre of film to really kind of get into because of you always have to kind of start talking about, well, that's not the case. Females like all sorts of movies. Men like all sorts of movies. You can't just kind of go. Also, there are so many bad rom-coms that kind of get lumped into that when there is a movie like A Beautiful Girls or like a When Harry Met Sally or like a Singles or there's a whole ton of them that are what I would call crossover movies. And if I was going to be based, if I was going to be sexist and based, they are the movies that as a boyfriend in your 20s, you're like, it's the one movie I can watch with my girlfriend that isn't awful, right? And that's a totally sexist statement, but I don't mean it like that. I just mean, there's a reaction to those movies where most of them, when you've sat down to watch stuff like 27 Dresses or whatever, you're like, oh, get me out of here. But you'll sit down to watch Beautiful Girls or When Harry Met Sally or, certain rom-coms or whatever. I mean, there's a ton that I think are crossover movies that appeal to everybody and that become their own small cult because they have a wide audience, but in a small way. That's kind of how I think about it. Mm-hmm. And I gravitate towards those movies because, like Kim and I say, they're the movies that when you don't necessarily want either a genre film that's going to kind of like really throw a lot of blood and craziness at you, but you also don't want, a rom-com where you're both going to kind of be rolling your eyes because it's badly written and badly acted or whatever. You want those movies you can put on where everyone gets something out of it. All the characters are relatable and you can have a good laugh, but you can also kind of just be warmed by the kind of mild drama of it all. I feel like this one fits squarely in that area. And that's kind of what I love about it. Also, you look at Scott Rosenberg. Here's a guy who came out of obviously the Miramax indie movie scene at the time. Never reached the heights of a Rodriguez or a Tarantino or a Kevin Smith or a Linklater or whatever, but had his own niche. He was kind of like the B tier Miramax indie offerings. He did this and Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. Those were his two like quintessential 90s movies. And I think if Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead is a cult movie, this is a cult movie. Like, that's how I sell it.
Okay. That's interesting. I never really thought of it that way.
That's what I think. Kim is holding up the DVD that she has here.
I've had this for a long time.
Scott has the soundtrack on cassette tape.
Ooh.
Look at that 90s man right there.
Baby.
We didn't talk about the soundtrack, but it's a fun one.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
Fun.
Got a bit of Tom Petty in there as well, right?
Somewhere.
Doesn't Tom Petty come in at the end? He's certainly on the trailer. That's Tom Petty is in the trailer.
Actually, there's no Tom Petty.
There's no Tom Petty in this movie.
No.
The second half of the trailer has some Tom Petty. I thought I had Tom Petty in the end of it. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I don't think so. Okay. I don't think any of that's Petty.
He did one of the 90s ones with Jennifer Aniston in it, one of these ensemble movies he did the soundtrack for. I forget what it is. So Dean Garman says he's never thought of it as a cult. It's a hidden gem, but it is in his top 10. So Dean Garman puts it in the top 10, which is awesome. Chris Taylor says, is it a chick flick? I don't think it's a cult movie, just lesser known. Mm-hmm. He says Things to Do in Denver is easily in his top 10, and he loves that movie. And Dean says, great chat, guys. Thank you so much. It got me out of having to watch The Voice. So Dean Garman's family over in the UK. So he's coming up to 10:15 in the UK.
Nice.
Thanks, Dean.
Thanks for
watching.
watching.
I agree with Dean.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. This was awesome. Kim, do you want to tell people where to find you online? Do you want to publicize your company?
Sure.
I mean, no,
not my company, but
not my company. Don't come to me for any professional advice.
No, I don't want that. No, find me on Twitter, Hotled, HOTLEAD on Twitter, or I am Kimberly Cross on Instagram. You can find me there. Thanks.
And Scott, tell everyone all about you and what you do and where to find you.
Oh boy. Personal Twitter, _Scott Toomey. Don't want to confuse myself with anybody else. And you can follow my two hobbies on Instagram. M Night Retro 101, as John mentioned, the Retrofuturism 101 radio program, repping the show, my guy. And I also have another Instagram where I like to showcase my analog collecting, vinyl records, VHS tapes, DVDs, Blu-rays, that kind of thing. And that is _analog_basement.
Well, and quite the collection it is.
It is quite the collection.
Thank you very much.
And I cannot wait to move up to New England and start my own analog basement. I'm so excited
I'm excited
it.
for you. And I can't wait to be able to get together with you guys more often than once every 3 years.
Indeed. This has been an absolute thrill. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been the After Movie Diner Beautiful Girls 25th celebration. And don't forget to subscribe to the After Movie Diner, bookmark aftermoviediner.com. Find us on all of your podcast platforms. Wherever After Movie and Diner are put together on social media, that is me. So follow, like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff, because it really, really does help. I'm not going to ask necessarily for financial remuneration for what we're doing, but please, please, please do share, like, comment, and all that good stuff. It just really does make all the difference. Word of mouth is the best of all promotions.
Share.
Share. So thank you ever so much, and look out for the Max Perlich Beautiful Girls 25th Anniversary interview coming your way. And if you're a fan of cult movies and great interviews, go listen to Steve Gutenberg on the After Movie Diner Booth Talk podcast. Just went up yesterday. The Goots. Talking all about Diner, which is another movie like this. Diner is another kind of like coming of age, guys trying to figure out what they want to do with the rest of life movie. So it's great to do Diner and Beautiful Girls back to back. What a great back-to-back thing on the Diner. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. Anyone listening to this on a podcast 50 years from now. And take care, everybody. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone.